Hello and welcome to Transforming Industries, the interview podcast focusing on industrial transformation, technology, and what M&A has to do with it. My guest today is Hanspeter Meindl from Ubisense.
If I look at things developing, you probably need to make a call which of these large ecosystems you want to be part of. Because selling individually becomes more and more difficult. So a lot of large companies will tell you we're not interested in new suppliers. And you either start working with one of our established big suppliers or you're out.
Transforming Industries.
Hanspeter is a real veteran with more than 4 decades of hands-on experience in what we today call Industry 4.0. He will take us on a journey along his career stages over the different decades, discuss challenges and technology advancements he experienced over the time. We will discuss his current role at Ubisense and the importance of being part of a strong ecosystem. We will also take a look on Hanspeter's perspective of the current competitive landscape across different layers of the technology stack. And for sure, finally, we will discuss his observations and opinion on M&A and M&A trends in the industrial tech space. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. Welcome, Hanspeter, to Transforming Industries. Really great having you here.
It's a pleasure.
Hanspeter, before we dive in, and the episode today, I call Industrial Transformation a journey through the decades. And I think that is the really interesting part about it, so that you are now for decades, we can say, in an area that is really prominent today. Since the 80s, you worked for companies like Siemens, Digital Equipment, I2 Technologies, Bearing Point, Vipro, and now recently Ubisense. So I think you have to say a lot about the whole topic of industrial transformation, and this will be, I think, a major part of the discussion today. But before we go into this journey and where you came from, maybe let's start with today, actually, with your current role and current position. So maybe you can introduce a little bit yourself and say what you're currently doing, actually.
Yeah, Tim, you already mentioned some of the important episodes in my professional life so far. And the thing is, this all started back in 1980, to be precise, when I joined Siemens, and is still continuing since then. Most of the time spent in either supply chain, production, manufacturing, whatever you want to call it, in different roles and responsibilities. So I spent a lot of time on the shop floor, so in operations. And when we met back at KPMG, Bearing Point, it kind of culminated in the strategy process transformation consulting.
Exactly.
So really in the strategy part. And we did some very nice projects then. At the moment, so since, what is it now, roughly 14 months, approximately, I'm with a company that is called Ubisense, and my role is I'm globally responsible for partner ecosystem, partner business for the company. Most of you probably have no clue who Ubisense is. It's a company headquartered in the UK. It came out of some research projects at Cambridge University, Cambridge Labs, about, 25 years ago, and is focusing on what is nowadays called real-time location services, RTLS. By the way, there's also a Gartner Magic Quadrant on this, which means we collect location data, mainly indoors, and make this available in a pre-processed form way so that it can be used in subsequent systems in an IT architecture, IT environment. This basically goes up all the way into reporting and analytics, and nowadays it's used for certain AI, machine learning, whatever activities. So we are part of that. Why are we part of that? Because this location data gives you the 360 view of what is happening on your shop floor. If you look at most shop floors today, we have a very high degree of visibility on what is happening on our machines, on our equipment. All the, let's say, situational, conditional information is available. So what is the temperature? What is the speed? We have that in real time. What we don't have is information about these, let's say, non-connected, non-automated process steps that you can still find, and that are more important than most people think. And we can add this through this location data and analysis of the location data. We can provide that information. What are certain resources on the shop floor doing that are normally not connected to the network? So this can be from very simple things, questions like, where are my handling units? Where's my material? And I still remember a discussion with a very large European aerospace company, and they had an eye-opening experience. They started tagging and tracking all their material handling units. I said, all of a sudden, we know where the things are. And that what we now know for sure is that they are almost never where they should be. So that someone is taking that from the warehouse, bringing it onto the shop floor, and drops it somewhere. I had discussions with a large tier one in the automotive space and producing seat sets for a luxury car, a very expensive car. And they started in sewing the seat covers. And I had to admit, so at least once a day, twice a day, we can't find them. We know we produce them. We know they're somewhere here on the shop floor, but we can't find them. And if you imagine something like that happening in a just-in-time, just-in-sequence environment, that can take you out of business very quickly.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, what you said, like the focus or the public focus is very much on automating manufacturing processes, and this part seems a little bit forgotten in preparation for today. I also reviewed a little bit the market, and it's really astonishing that really a high percentage of disruptions in production processes is basically caused by such issues that you just mentioned, right? So
yeah, we do a lot of projects around use cases. People say we spend way too much time and therefore effort, capacity on searching things.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It takes us hours, or we set ourselves a threshold and said if we can't find it within 30 minutes, we restart production. And just imagine that, something you need now, you need to start a pre-production, which means you're disrupting everything.
Yeah.
You're going in and said, no, don't do this now, do this first.
And actually, your solution, are you focused on let's say specific industries, or is it more, let's say, kind of a horizontal solution that can be applied to basically any kind of manufacturing environment? Or
the thing is, if you go to the right level of abstraction, this is not only a topic in, let's say, all kinds of manufacturing industries. Mm-hmm. This is also a topic, for example, in healthcare. We see a lot of interest coming from hospitals.
Okay.
We see interest coming from daycare, full care providers. Because, and you're living in Germany just like me. You know that we have a problem finding enough people.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, you say, hey, guys, why don't you use technology to compensate for some of that?
Yeah.
And this is really a horizontal topic across everything. Just go back, it's not that long ago, think about COVID. Tracking people, tracking proximity, etc.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with pure manufacturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can use it anywhere. The thing is, Ubisense is focusing very much on discrete industries, whereby the product, the platform is industry agnostic, so you can use it anywhere. But we are a relatively small company, so whatever we do, we need to focus.
Yeah.
But this now, we can close the loop. This is why they brought me on board with the charter to build the partner ecosystem, because the management and the investors agreed that in order to really scale the company, we need to work through partners.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make this happen in a reasonable period of time. We cannot do that organically.
Yeah. And I think that is something we will touch anyway later on, the whole ecosystem development, because I think today in this complex environment, no company can actually develop projects and businesses around manufacturing, automation, digitization alone. So there's always a need for an ecosystem of partners to implement such kind of solutions.
That is one thing that is absolutely correct. And the other thing is you always need to fit into an existing ecosystem. So whenever we approach a new project, it's not that this is a greenfield situation in general. Normally, it's a pretty significant brownfield environment, and you're trying to apply some, let's say, green patches to that environment, which means you have to be able to integrate, communicate, interface, sometimes with a lot of legacy. Latest by then, you need to find people that still understand that legacy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that some guys on this some people listening to this would be very surprised if they knew what kind of outdated systems, operating systems, databases are in use in critical environments. Back at KPMG, we did a project for a large German OEM, only to find out that 80%, 90% of their manufacturing-related data resided in a discontinued old database technology. That if everyone goes, if your people retire, and this is a matter of 2 to 5 years, simple to find out, you're lost, you're screwed completely.
I think that is a good point for taking a little bit more a deeper look at your career and your journey through the centuries, because I think this is a good example and a good story actually. You have to tell how companies have evolved over time. So if we take a little journey about your career and actually combining that a little bit with the thinking how industrial automation, what we call today Industry 4.0, these kind of topics have evolved over time. Maybe we can take a little journey through your career and reflecting these kind of topics a little bit.
Absolutely. So, as I said, when we discussed this episode of your podcast, the driving factor since the 1980s is data.
Yeah.
How do I get data and thereby information about what is happening? And maybe I was in a bit of a specific situation because I started my career in semiconductors And semiconductors is it's a pretty weird industry. Because the main driving factors, some of the, I would even call them main KPIs, are cycle time and yield, because they vary unbelievably, which means you have no certainty. If you look at some of the standard discrete manufacturing, you have a high level of conformity and continuity in your production.
Mm-hmm.
If you put one thing in, you get one out. You don't lose much. In semiconductors, if you look at the end-to-end process, your total yield is, if you're good, 40%. So you start 100 and you get 40 out. You lose 60 on average. If you look at individual lots, it can be anywhere between you get nothing out and you get 100% out. So how do you ensure that you can support your customers? And you have cycle times that are measured in at least weeks, sometimes even months. So it's not, hey, let's restart that batch. Does not fly.
Yeah.
So for shop floor people, it was always the topic, why is this happening? Can we find some correlation, some pointers, some indications why and when this is happening? Which means you need data. And you are working in a sub-micron environment, so you cannot send people onto the shop floor and say, hey, take a look. It's a bit more difficult. So this is why we started very early on to try and get data, process data from the equipment. Because we knew that some of that information, some of that data is available. But this equipment was not ready to communicate. So the only way you had was the service port. The port that your service technicians connected to if something went completely wrong with the equipment. So you had people sitting there with a line tracer for days to find out what does a signal on the port mean compared to what the equipment is doing.
Okay.
And then you started writing programs to extract that information and correlate it automatically. And then, way back then, you had a lot of technical limitations because computers weren't as good as they are today. And one of my standard statements is always, even back in the 80s, people on the shop floor knew exactly what they wanted. They couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So back in those days, we were trying to do some simulation, output simulation. It took us 24 hours.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And why? Because you could not load all the data into your main memory. You were constantly paging back and forth with external memory. Your processor was idling 90% of the time, waiting for response from the external device. So this is one example, and you did not have that kind of an ecosystem of commercial off-the-shelf applications. It just did not exist.
Yeah.
You had some very early versions of an SAP system. Whoever spent as much time as I did knew how good that was. And it was focusing on finance and accounting. So it didn't help you in logistics. It didn't help you in production. So there was almost nothing. So you had large teams building these kind of systems, which means you were totally dependent on bespoke solutions with no documentation. So if the guy or the team that produced that software left the company, we had to start back from scratch again. And this then gradually started changing when we saw some really significant advancements in the IT technology. And I would say one of the most important breakthroughs was moving from a 32-bit operating system to a 64-bit operating system. Because all of a sudden you were able to address terabytes of main memory. And I still remember, and this takes me to my next step. So Digital Equipment brought the first 64-bit processor to the market. And I still remember we went to, I think it was still C-bit. And we took one of these machines, loaded to the maximum. And we installed SAP and the database and everything. And we blew every benchmark. Because we had the database in main memory. And you say, how is this possible? How can you do that? I said, very simple. It takes a bit longer to start the application, but once it's up and running, nothing is slowing it down. And today, you have that technology in your laptop, you have that in your computer at home. It's common. But this really helped to bring forward all these solutions in simulation, testing, etc. And then, with that, in parallel, you also saw that the standardization was taking up or gaining speed, and you got a lot more standard systems that you could buy off the shelf that had standard interfaces. So it started to become a lot easier to build these kind of applications and tools. At least on the commercial IT side, the operational technology was still a bit different. This is now one of the main trends. So how do we integrate OT and IT to make this barrier disappear? And the issue is that if you look at automation, the decision criteria for selecting a piece of equipment are completely different. You look for the physical capabilities of the tool or the machinery, and not necessarily what PLC is in there, what connectivity is provided, which means you put that in because it's the best for the job, and then you tell IT, go figure it out. You need to integrate that.
Yeah.
But this is also changing. So this is some of the steps, and but it's always, and this is the continuum. It's always about generating access to data and making data available. To look at data in context. So I said I have information from my logistics, from my whatever quality, production, etc. systems, and I can start analyzing that.
Yeah. And I think that actually improved then when let's say like the like MES systems had a broader rollout into manufacturing, right? So that I think was also a key milestone, having data more structured available.
Yeah, but I would say most of today's standardization effort is driven by the knowledge that a significant portion of your experienced workforce will leave the company. They will retire.
Yeah.
And you need to replace them. And the people that you're bringing in have less experience and less knowledge. So you try to formalize the existing knowledge into systems to better support your new employees, your new joiners. And I had discussions with heads of production that were using a lot of temps during the holiday periods. And I said, today we need to hire those guys 4 to 6 months in advance to train them properly. If you could help us that we can reduce that to 2 months, that would be a huge commercial gain. And with new technologies, with MES systems, with AI, VI systems, you can do that.
Okay, so when we look at the later steps or the in the early late 90s, early 2000s of your career, I think then you started working, implementing IT systems around supply chain management, manufacturing systems. What were the challenges at that time, actually?
One of the challenges was to find the right system, because if you look into the late 90s, early 2000, on the MES side, you had and still have the same problem that you had in the ERP space prior to 2000. You have hundreds of companies selling solutions, some of them very small, dedicated to very specific industries. So you have to find one that does the job, that is sustainable, that will take you along for a ride for a couple of decades. Because if you look at manufacturing, you don't implement systems that easily.
Yeah.
It's always a disruption. So you don't want to do that every other year. This is that's going to kill you. So you have to find something that you can run, that you can roll out, that you can sustain for a significant period of time. I'd say that the shortest is probably some situations in automotive tier one, where you have a 5 to 7 year project life cycle. So you implement something for a specific part, for a specific contract that you have with an OEM, and you need to run that for 5 to 7 years. You cannot take it out.
And how was it actually the situation regarding data at that time period? So was it easier then to extract data for the systems? How did you get to the data at that time?
The thing is, as soon as you start moving to more commercial off-the-shelf systems, you normally get a reliable documentation with those systems. That means there are interfaces, there are interface descriptions, there might even be a data model that gets disclosed, so you exactly know what data is available, how can I access that. So it becomes a lot easier on the one hand side. On the other hand, you still had these issues. How do I get to the data that I want to use, for example, in my MES system? How do I get to information coming out of my SCADA systems? That was still an issue that is also becoming easier through these IoT platforms that companies like Siemens, PTC, and nowadays AWS, all the hyperscalers provide.
Yeah.
So you know to a large extent how you can access that and how you can get to that data.
So
now that the main problem still is, you need to go through a very extensive data evaluation process. Because one of my favorite statements is always, just because some application claims it's SAP compliant, that does not mean that it's going to interact with your implementation of SAP easily. Because if you look at long time, for example, SAP users, the data is in records and in fields that you would never think of. Because today's functionality was not available 5 years ago, and people just wanted to do that, so they started misusing some of the available functionality and capabilities, and that is what makes this integration difficult. If everyone that is installing a COTS product would stick to the recommendation of the supplier, integration would be easy. But over time, it just there's a huge divergence in these systems. So you really need to be careful and really validate that the data that you're looking at is the data that you want to look at.
So, and I mean, you mentioned already like IoT platforms. I think that is, let's say, like the next decade when we look at your career, like your work for Aprizio, for Larsen Toubro, and then also latest for Wipro. That was like the time when IoT platforms came up, the whole wording around Industry 4.0. How has the environment for the projects changed? I would assume they got much more complex than they have been in the past, like coordinating multiple technologies. What was your experience, or what can you tell a little bit about this time?
On the one hand side, some things got a bit easier because the level of standardization is increasing, and an increased level of standardization makes integration easier. But on the other side, you had to deal with a lot of new technologies and new players, because with all these, let me call them applications or IT systems. Mm-hmm. If something gets hyped and becomes the new big thing to do, you see a boost in the number of companies selling that solution. So I still remember back at LTI, we were at an IoT conference in Barcelona, and I had a discussion with someone, I think it was from AWS, and he said, "Yeah, we just did a survey in Europe, and there is 400 plus companies claiming to provide an IoT platform." I said, "Yeah, and I probably just talked to half of them today." Yeah. Everyone was showing up and said, "We have an IoT platform, and ours is the best. And you need to consider ours when you're doing your system integration work." This is like in MES, this is like in ERP, this is like in PLM. And you can always see the same behavior. You have that peak in everyone's jumping the bandwagon. And then after a relatively short period of time, a small number really survives. Some are still kind of in the market, and the number that is of relevance gets smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is happening here. So you see a lot of companies disappearing for various reasons. They go out of business. They cannot maintain the speed of technology innovation, or they get acquired if they have some really good tools and ideas. Mm-hmm. You always see that consolidation.
And then, like after this, what do you think about coming to the, let's say, to the present at the moment? So we had, like, when we reflect from the past, coming from the let's say industrial software, like MES systems, PLM, etc. Then having the IoT platforms. What is currently, I think, what do you think are the key trends driving the market at the moment in terms of technologies?
I would say it's the idea of providing these, let me call them functional platforms. So if you look at the hyperscalers, both AWS and Microsoft, yes, they provide an infrastructure to run your IT in, but they also start creeping into the functional space. So if you look at things like industrial cloud on the AWS side, if you look at Azure for manufacturing, if you look at what used to be MindSphere on the Siemens side, I provide a platform that can run my own applications and that can also run partner applications. So I think the era of these large monolithic IT systems is over. Mm-hmm. And we are moving into the age or the era of apps. Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of similarities. So we all know about Google Play App Store, Amazon App Store, what have you not. And my expectation is that and we already see that, and we will see that in an increasingly importance, similar things on that side. And if I go back to Wipro, we always try to put our applications, our IP into these app stores. So you can go to AWS and you can find functionality provided by Wipro. You can do the same thing on the Siemens side. And this is not a Wipro specific, this is what everybody is doing.
Actually, this bringing me to the point when we talk about, and that's what you already said, like the complexity of the whole landscape is pretty much increasing, actually, compared to how it was like in the 90s or early 2000s, right? With each technology, additional vendors coming into the place, multiplying the solutions in that specific area. Maybe let's take a look on the competitive landscape if we look a little bit with the technology stack on that to structure it. And I think besides from, let's say, the machinery and industrial automation perspective, if we look on the upper stacks, I think you started already talking, for example, about the infrastructure and cloud infrastructure stack. If we go through that, what stack by stack or level by level, what are the key players actually for you in that stack? How manifested are the positions in that specific area? If we look at that, I think in the infrastructure it's quite clear. We have the hyperscalers, right? So there the claims are already done.
Yeah, if you look at the infrastructure level, this is pretty much occupied today by an AWS and a Microsoft. Google is not playing a significant role in these segments. So you can see it more in the consumer or in some of the consumer-facing industries. The question is, what is going to happen with these hyperscalers originating from China? Mm-hmm. Something that is very difficult to predict, because those guys have a huge home market, so they have a huge base, and they have a lot of money.
But if you look, for example, let's stick with that. If you look at the discussions around like TikTok, for example, something, do you see there really a huge chance for Chinese providers, because this is like critical data, critical infrastructure, moving to Western markets, or is that, let's say, from a political perspective, difficult?
You will see markets that will not allow for that to happen, and you will see other markets that will take that on, most likely for commercial reasons. Mm-hmm. I say, hey, this is cheaper, and we can do the same. And you see a lot of countries, emerging countries, that are pretty open to Chinese investments. So why shouldn't they be doing that? Which means, if you have suppliers in these countries and you want to integrate with those suppliers, you have a challenge. Yeah. How do you transfer data out of Chinese-operated cloud infrastructure environment into an AWS Azure environment? Yeah. It's not necessarily just the topic and said, yeah, but they will never be of importance in Germany, in the US, in the EU. It is there a chance that they become important in emerging countries?
Sure.
And if you look at the latest legislation in supply chain governance and compliance, then you will need that data.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this whole topic becomes unmanageable.
Mm-hmm. Generally, if you stick a little bit with the hyperscalers, what do you think, or what do you see currently in the market? Where are they moving, or let's say that the platform providers overall? You already mentioned going towards the direction of apps, app stores. So what are you expecting where the hyperscalers or IoT platform providers, the large ones, are moving to?
They will move, and I would say there's enough evidence today. They will move up the value chain. Mm-hmm. Through their own applications and capabilities, plus through building a large partner ecosystem that provides the functionality on top of their platforms. Mm-hmm. And this is maybe where AWS and Microsoft are going slightly different directions. So you can see AWS also runs everything for Amazon. Mm-hmm. And they built a lot of solutions that were used mainly Amazon internally. But if you follow that, you can see that they are opening up that functionality to other users. So, for example, the predictive maintenance solution that was built for the fleet of trucks operated by Amazon is now a service that you can subscribe to as a non-Amazon AWS participant. Mm-hmm. Microsoft is going a slightly different way, and Amazon is pretty much a closed shop. So everything that runs there, you need a license, you need to pay. This is the way they make money. If you look at Microsoft, they are also, from a functional perspective, they are also very much embracing the open source concept, mm-hmm. at least to some extent. Example for that is what was called the Open Manufacturing Platform. An initiative to build the new, kind of OT MES environment for a very large German automotive OEM, which was based on open source licenses. So you could sign up, you could participate, and you could use everything. Mm-hmm. And you saw that the number of participants was growing dramatically. From various industries. At the end, you had companies in the food and beverage industry joining the OMP initiative. And they did some really good foundational work. Some of the participants obviously found out that they don't want to disclose more what was already in the foundational work. So this whole topic was unfortunately canceled, I think 2 years ago. But all the results of OMP are still available in GitHub, so you can still download it and it's still of relevance. Mm-hmm. And it gives you a good foundation to start similar work. And the whole idea was to build that kind of network of partners, so subscribers, providers, or contributors to that platform, so that everyone can grow and improve more easily.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you already mentioned like the upward move of the hyperscalers also towards the application level. If we look at the application level, I think here we have really, let's say, the broadest space of different players entering into that market. You have like enterprise software players moving into that space, industrial software players, hyperscalers, even, let's say, system integrators providing applications in the market. You have manufacturing companies acquiring smaller firms entering the space. How do you expect that area to develop?
But the thing is, as in every hype situation, we see the emergence of a lot of new players.
Yeah.
If you take a look at what they are providing, it's normally some relatively specific solutions for specific technical or functional issues. Because they are small, so they have an idea, they implement that. And the thing is, if I look at things developing, you probably need to make a call which of these large ecosystems you want to be part of. Because selling individually becomes more and more difficult.
Yeah.
So a lot of large companies will tell you, we're not interested in new suppliers. If you cannot work with AWS, if you cannot work with Azure, sorry guys. We are reducing the number of our suppliers. And you either start working with one of our established big suppliers or you're out. Because it becomes more and more difficult for manufacturing companies or other companies to manage this huge number of suppliers, all the different contracts, the running POs, tracing POs, invoices. It's just a nightmare. Especially if you look at less and less people available in that space, and even in recent discussion, who was it? Was it ThyssenKrupp Steel? They announced that they're going to reduce their admin staff by 400, 600 people. So this has to have some ripple down effects on the way you do business.
But generally, when we talk about applications, I remember we had a discussion in the past when we were talking about why Industry 4.0 in application to manufacturing processes, not in terms of technology available, is not as advanced. And you just mentioned in the beginning this example of the automotive company with very old systems. Is not that advanced as it would be technology-wise possible. And you said production and disruption are two things are not coming together. So it's always more kind of an evolution. So is this what we will see going forward on the application level, that we have smaller specific applications that can be integrated or applied to ongoing processes? Because most of the machineries are made for, let's say, like 10, 15, 20 years. So the replacement and innovation cycles of machineries are completely different from technology, right?
Yeah, the thing is, if you look at IT investments, being it applications, being it hardware, whatever, what you have, if it is classified to be industrial, it is 2-3 years. But with the side effect that it is becoming prohibitively expensive at the end of this period.
Yeah.
Because these large factories, you just look at processors. Yeah, you can still get older versions of the processors, but they get more expensive. If you look at the software, if you're falling behind more than 2 versions, you're out of standard maintenance. You have to sign up for a specific maintenance contract, which means this is gonna cost you an arm and a leg to do that. On the other hand, rolling out new versions of an existing applications on the shop floor is difficult, because you need time to do that.
Yeah.
And if you look at, and a lot of industries are still following a 24/7 model by 365. So when do you want to do that?
Yeah.
You need to find a slot, and if you start digging into these plannings, you will always find one. But that's normally a week max at some very awkward point in time during the year.
Yeah.
which means if you want to do that, you probably have to do it during the Christmas, New Year period. Yeah, we had that. We did these kind of projects for tier ones, automotive. Significant changes, 24th of December till 2nd of January, which is not easy to explain to your teams.
Sure. Yeah.
But otherwise, this is running. This is on a tight schedule.
Yeah.
So this is a real problem. So this is one. How do I upgrade existing running lines to new versions of technology? Then the next one is most of these lines, after a period of 7 years, 10 years, will get refurbished, partially rebuilt. So that's the next point in time where you can change something.
Yeah.
But again, whatever you do now might be running in principle, for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And there's on the IT side, there's constantly new things coming in, flowing in. And we had this. I had these discussions with multiple of, tier ones in automotive are an overstressed example, but those guys will tell you, sorry, we cannot even add a simple RFID tag to our product because that will kill our profitability. So those guys are making a profit on the third decimal on the right side of the comma. And they only make profit because it's huge volumes.
Yeah.
So even adding something that costs you 20 cents, 30 cents, they said, no way.
And if we leave the application space for a short moment, I'm coming back to that. I'm talking about the level up above the.
One closing statement on all of this maybe. What you can see today is really a carefully staggered approach to move all your application landscape to a standardized environment. And these are probably 10 to 20 year projects. And you can see that with one large automotive OEM, which is standardizing, is planned to standardize all plants globally on what is called the digital production platform. And they started by simply connecting the plants to this environment and said, we just pull the data that you have anyway. And now gradually they move into more and more standardization here. They might take larger leaps whenever they build something new. So whenever you build a new factory, it's easier. But existing ones, it will be a painstakingly slow process. Because you never stop production. That is the mantra on top of everything. You can do whatever you want, but you never stop production. And this is also one of the challenges why we are not making more at least this is true for, let's say, more of the Western European companies. So if you have maybe something in China and the Chinese government decides we want to do that, then everyone will start jumping and they stop production for 2 months to change it because ultimately profitability is a different thing there. But in our hemisphere, this will not happen, and this is why we are not more advanced. Because I can promise you, if someone says, I want to build a new fab, and I give you the money, building something that is 100% Industry 4.0 compliant is possible.
Yeah, but isn't that also like then a very important factor for especially for younger companies, also like maybe not Ubisense because you have a different focus of solutions, but for younger companies focusing on digitization of processes, for example, that they need to very quickly look for international expansion to regions where new factories are built, for example, rather than modernization of factories in the Western Hemisphere?
Yes. Yes. And you also need to scan markets very carefully because in some of the established industries, you see up and coming newcomers that don't have the legacy of the established players. Yeah. So if you look at, for example, at Tesla and what those guys are doing, a lot of what they are doing is just because they never had any legacy. They never had a legacy plant. Yeah. They never had a legacy investment. And this is a similar example when Dell came into play and started selling PCs online only with payment terms towards their suppliers, that they got the money from the customers before they had to pay their suppliers. They created a lot of headaches with the established providers of PCs. You had distributors, you had whatever. You could not simply switch to that model. Yeah. And this is with Tesla, what they are doing in stamping with this giga presses and other things, and the advancement that they made in the software-defined vehicle from the beginning. It's just difficult for others to catch up. The good thing is you can catch up. If you look at some of the German OEMs, they're getting pretty close, and they are, in some cases, even getting better. Mm-hmm. But you have to have a certain standing and a certain capital to do that, and the willingness to pull that through. And yes, for small companies trying to get into that market and participate in that market significantly, honestly, make a good choice which ecosystem you want to join, and then focus on that.
We will touch a little bit deeper on that or more on that in a minute. I just want to finalize the technology stack because when we met last time, you mentioned something really interesting that I had a very different direction in mind when we were talking about the IT service and system integration level. So I remember that you said this is actually the level that is disrupted most by technology developments, especially on the infrastructure and hyperscaler level. Can you a little bit explore on that?
If you look at the projects or the work that SIs did in the past, it was not just system integration. Yeah, it was also building new applications, filling the gaps between existing applications, etc. You will still have some level of system integration that needs to be done, customization that needs to be done. So you will work on the top level and said you will build nice UIs according to corporate, your customer's corporate standard. And you will always have to work on the lower level because your equipment or your environment on the shop floor is always different. Yeah. So there will be some left, but the middle part will become less important because it's already taken care of by the partner management and by the validation that these ecosystem providers do prior to selling or putting something on their shop. Mm-hmm. And so this, let's say, if you look at the level of SIs and advisory companies, this is where I expect most of the shift to happen. Okay. Because as we said, the infrastructure ones are trying to move up the value chain. So they are taking away some of the business of what SIs do.
Okay.
So they compensate for that in two ways, and there's numerous examples. They compensate partially by becoming a member of these networks and providing applications or building blocks into that environment. And they are moving up more into the advisory space.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can help you to make the right choices, pick the right environment, select the right applications, etc., that you need to reach your goals. So I think these two boundaries are the most changing ones at the moment. But again, that's also nothing new. Let's be serious, because if you look at the MES market, you had companies that originated in the MES market, but you had also a lot of companies that emerged from the SCADA automation level into the MES space. You had others that came down from the ERP space into the MES space. So this is whenever these kind of consolidation and focus is happening, you see the boundaries between the upper and the lower level of the architecture, they start blurring.
Mm-hmm. But actually, that also would mean a change in the business models of the companies, right, at that level, because actually the implementation work was that brought the volumes to the company. So if you're moving more to an advisory role, you would need, in that type of work, less people and less volume, right? Maybe more, let's say, higher qualified, but in terms of volume, there will be reductions. Is that also why you can see that like this large system integrators are also, I mean, they are one of the heaviest acquirers of companies, right, in that area,
yes.
like in the software area especially. So is that why we see a gradual shift in the business models? Or
Yes. And you can see that, and one of the companies I worked for made significant acquisitions also in the advisory consulting space. To boost that capability. The other thing is you also try to compensate for some of the business that is no longer existing through these applications, making them available as a service, so that you get more predictability into your environment. It's also by working even closer with these hyperscalers. You would probably be very surprised to see the number of resources that these usual suspects from India provide to an Amazon, to a Microsoft, you name it. This is easily 4 to 5 digit numbers. So that's not 50 people here, 50 people there. This can be 10,000 people here. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these hyperscalers, they follow the same model.
Okay.
They built an ecosystem of developers, testers, what have you not, to bring their product forward. So yes, they still maintain the product roadmap, the architecture, all of these future defining things, but everything else they try to get rid of.
Okay.
And find someone else to do that on their behalf.
Yeah. And I think now we touched so many times the wording ecosystem. So now I think we have to finally to go a little bit into that. I mean, this is also your key role, right, in Ubisense, developing the ecosystem. And you mentioned already a couple of minutes back that if you go to that or you enter the market either as a young technology company or let's say as a machinery company, automation company, developing solutions that area, you have to make very early a decision in what ecosystem you will join actually. So is that, let's say today, a mandatory topic, saying this is a key decision you have to make, and also a key decision that determines your success entering a market, or?
Maybe at very early stages you have a lead customer that is funding product development for a certain period to a certain level. But that is a non-scaling model. So if you're happy with 10 people working for one customer, you're fine, but then maybe you're in the wrong space. If you want to grow, then yes, you at one point in time you need to start considering whom do I partner with to get better access to the market, to gain more visibility, to gain access to additional development resources. So turning development resources from a kind of a CapEx investment to an OpEx investment. Yes. That is important, and does not just have implications on your, let's say, your sales business side. It's also something that you need to consider on your product development side, because the expectation in the market is that you come up with new functionality quite frequently.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because if you do that successfully, then your installed base is growing, and you all know software is never defect free. So you will spend more time in fixing bugs in what is already out there than you can spend on developing new functionality. And this is a catch-22. How do you break out of that? Normally, you don't have the money to scale your own resources accordingly, assuming that you could find them.
Yeah.
Which is problem number one. But if you think about it, once you see that you need them and you want to hire them, this takes months to take an impact. If you manage to build a partner ecosystem where you have trained resources on your product that are mainly delivering new projects, but that you can use at least some of that workforce also to do product development. And I can tell you one thing, regardless of which of the large SI companies I worked for, scaling up teams is one thing those guys are perfect in. You need 100 more? Give me 4 weeks. So this is, you're really, again, I'm maybe a bit overstretching this 360 example, but you also need to look at that as a company that wants to grow, that wants to scale from a 360 perspective. What is my core? What is it? What do I need to retain? And what is things that are very important? Don't get me wrong, but they don't differentiate me from my competitor. Gaining speed in product development might be something that will differentiate you, because you can bring new functionality to market faster than others. This is also important, at least in certain markets.
And what for you, what also reflecting your own role, what is the key challenge, especially as a young company or a new entrance into that whole space, developing an ecosystem?
I would say we are not necessarily developing an ecosystem. We are trying to find an ecosystem that we can participate in.
Okay.
I think for a small company, developing an ecosystem is pretty difficult, time-consuming. It's a lot of effort. Because there are a lot of things that need to be done, that need to be implemented and adhered to if you talk about a real ecosystem. And there's companies out there that do that for quite some time. And you need to pick the right one, or the one that you feel comfortable with, and say, yeah, this is what those guys are doing. I can understand, I can follow, they have a similar mentality, whatever. They have interesting players in their ecosystem. Let's join them.
Okay.
Because if you want to build that and if you want to scale, you need to get access to some of the big players. And big players are interested in big projects.
Yeah.
And as a small company, you normally don't bring big projects initially.
Yeah.
So you need to find someone that you can really fire up on your idea and your capabilities, create a vision saying, hey, if you have this additional functionality, this additional set of data, you see, this is that million of other things that you can do based on that. So don't look at just a small project based on our technology. Think about the implication of being able to do all of that. And then you move up, and then you become interesting, and I said, okay, if we can do automation in some of the material logistics processes because of that, if we can do better analytics, if we can provide better results from AI tools, then it becomes of interest. This is what I'm currently doing with our larger partners. Because the thing is, and it's very simple math. If you have an account manager at one of these large SI companies that needs to do 60 million, 100 million revenue per year, a project that's going to yield $1 million is of no interest.
Yeah.
He just needs too many of those to make up his numbers. You need to show a way to grow this 1 million initial projects to a 10 million, 15 million, 20 million opportunity within the next 6 to 12 months. Then they start listening. Then you get attention. The rest is to say, I talk to my project manager.
Yeah, sure.
And those guys never have time to talk to you, and this is just frustrating. You need to help leveraging this and scaling that up and creating this idea and said, hey guys, if we Ubisense do $1 million with this customer, you can easily do 15 million based on the $1 million we do.
Yeah. So finally, if we complete the picture, I mean, there is situations where you have to think beyond partnerships. That's one of the reasons why M&A in that area is also a key topic, right? So when companies have to think about where do I want to play, how can I scale my own business in that area? So you see both sides. You see companies entering the market, from manufacturing, from industrial automation, acquiring digital businesses. On the other sides, with all the dynamics, you see a lot of companies in the situation when we think about industrial software. For example, we have the MES segment. It's always one segment. I'm looking a little bit at that, where you see also companies confronted by technology development saying, can I do this investments to further progress my technology, or do I sell my business? So we have a M&A dynamic in this overall landscape from two sides. How do you see, with all these years of experience, how do you see the M&A environment at the moment in that field?
If we look at M&A, let's say in the same industry, software companies buying software companies, etc., in a lot of cases that works out pretty well. If those companies take the time to really integrate the old and the new solutions and capabilities into a new product, there's a lot of examples that panned out very nicely and very, very profitable. If you look at investments that are crossing those boundaries, so let's say a manufacturing company buying a software company, most of them, sorry to say so, never met expectations.
What is the reason for that, you think?
Different cultures, different salary levels. It's mainly human factors.
But isn't it also like
that starts very, very simple. We acquire a new company, so now this company becomes really important and everyone else is deprioritized because we just put a lot of money into that company. We need to take that forward, blah, 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 which hampers your existing business. So you're not integrating, you're just moving focus around. And people will find out that the salary levels in the IT industry are completely different from the salary levels in normal industrial environments. He said, why are those guys getting paid the big bucks? They're hardly contributing to our results. We are keeping the company afloat and we get just small percentages of that. You have different personalities. People working in IT, they think differently, they act differently, and you need to align those cultures. You need to make sure that people understand each other, that they see the challenges. We touched upon some of them. If you talk to IT people, said, hey, great, there's a new hardware device. Let's include that and let's use that. It brings tremendous benefits. People on the other side will say, hey, wait a minute. How do you want to roll that out? How you want to train people? How do you want to ensure that it does not impact all of my existing environment? It's a different mindset.
Yeah, but isn't it also like, that's my feeling sometimes, that some of the things upfront a transaction are not really well thought, right? Because if the logic behind from a manufacturing company or an industrial automation company is really to utilize the installed base or the access to the industrial customers in terms of selling additional digital business. But if I often look at the reality after an acquisition, those businesses are really, let's say, kind of very loosely coupled, if at all, and there is no really let's say systematic or structural follow-up on having these synergies, right? Because if you don't really integrate also the sales efforts, that won't happen from itself, right?
No, these kind of acquisitions would require a lot of strategic thinking prior to executing the transaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And you need to be, you need to approach that with an accountant's mindset. So, show me the numbers, show me the facts.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about ideas and long-term strategies and things like that. What are the facts? What are the basics? How do we want to achieve those results that everyone is talking about? Is this feasible? What does it require? And this is a painstaking process.
Yeah.
Let me call it that. I was thinking about a different wording, but that would have been inappropriate for a podcast.
But putting it the other way around, if I am a manufacturing company or an industrial automation provider, beyond what we've seen in the past in terms of success, but if I want to, and I think they have to think about how they can transform the business also to digital solutions, are there other ways than acquiring businesses?
Yeah.
Because I think they are
Yeah.
too far behind if compared with software digital companies to get their share of the business. So I think there is no other way than acquiring something, right?
No, you can. in my opinion, in my experience, you can also achieve similar results by participating in the ecosystems that we stressed a lot in the last hour. Because if you go in, you will probably find the companies that are providing exactly the building blocks that you need to enhance your existing products to the next level. So we're talking about something like, you could call it white labeling. And that's something that we also see in the market. We are talking to line builders, so companies that build complete manufacturing lines, warehouses for their customers, about integrating our capabilities into their offering, into their product offering. So they will not acquire us. Mm-hmm. We would just set up a very close partnership relationship and said, hey, this is, and you will find companies that are ready to do that will actually really white label and said, we remove our logo from our products and put yours on. We don't care because ultimately it's a money game.
Which then I think is also like an alternative for, let's say, mid-sized companies that don't even have the money or the funding to acquire businesses, right?
Right, and it's also a way to evaluate each other in a much more risk-free way than saying, we buy you guys.
Yeah.
And this is, again, I have good existing products. I have a team that is capable of taking these products to the next levels. They are lacking some ideas, some capabilities, for example, in the IT space. We could add this and make this an additional service offer or an additional capabilities to our product. We can offer a very good use case, business case to do that, and we can differentiate from our competition. Mm-hmm. Why does a large manufacturing company have to look at real-time location separate from the new line that they are building? Why isn't that just integrated in the architecture of the new line? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Do I need to buy an RTLS company for that?
Probably not. To finalize the M&A part, what about from your perspective, trends that you observe in the market? What are key segments where you see a lot of transactions happening or expect in the near future or midterm future to happen?
I would expect that in the spaces that we discussed previously. So in this infrastructure IoT environment, there will be, I would expect acquisitions to happen to fill the gaps in the offerings. There will be acquisitions coming from probably large SI companies to buy those capabilities, tools, applications to become even more prominent in those ecosystems and really tune up their software as a service revenue, so that their baseline revenue stream. And also on the other side, we will see that these companies will buy the smaller, more focused advisory companies, consulting companies to strengthen that part of the business. And I would even expect some of the large advisory companies to put more focus onto that. And you can see that because if you talk to some of the large ones, they invested that much into better understand and better handle technology than you would have ever thought of.
And actually, another aspect that what I'm thinking of is, we mentioned some of the technologies when we talked about your journey in industrial transformation, like the whole industrial software area. We have companies that have been founded in the 90s or even late 80s, where even in technology segments, people have to think about company succession, right? Or we see, driven by cloud technology, huge transformation or disruption in these technology areas themselves. So how do you see, like, for example, MES or PLM or even some more mature supply chain companies? How do you see things in that area? What would these companies need to do in order to stay ahead of the innovation in that market segment?
The thing is, and that is with every, let's say, product family. Every product family has a life cycle.
Yeah.
And every product family is built on top of a certain technology stack, on a certain way of thinking, and it will reach the end of its useful lifetime. So the thing is, do I have enough money available? Can I raise enough money to basically build a new product? To transform my existing product into the new technology area. Yeah. If you don't manage that, you will be out of business.
Yeah.
So if you look at the MES space, that might take a bit longer because we discussed the cycles more than once.
Yeah.
If you're in other spaces, this might happen very quickly.
Yeah.
But you just get replaced. And I've seen that in some of the companies that I worked for. They took major changes in their product. From legacy ERP to a complete web-based, modular, what have you not, kind of approach. They basically built a new product. And I told all the existing customers, we will maintain and support the installed base, but we will not further develop it.
Okay.
I even worked for a company that sold off the major part of its business, which was supporting installed base, to completely focus on building a new product. And this is something I see over and over again. So I had discussions with my son, who was working in the software industry, also kind of a startup company, and they just sold their complete services business. That we want to get out of services business. We want to be a product company, 100%. It's also a driver at Ubisense that we say, hey, we are a software company, and we want to focus on our software product. Mm-hmm. And we want partners to pick up all the services work and the support work, not us. We cannot scale in that model.
So at the end, we touched again the ecosystem, right? and again, emphasizes how important focusing on that is. Hanspeter, I think we had a great journey.
It took us a bit longer.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. But we really had a great journey, reflecting all the experience you made over the decades, looking on technology developments, looking at the competitive landscape, how important ecosystem development is, and actually finally also rounding up the discussion regarding M&A. So I think it was really interesting having you in the podcast. And
it was a pleasure to be in the podcast. So
thank you very much.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was really interesting having you.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Transforming industries.
So, what a journey. 4 decades of experience in industrial transformation. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, please leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform or recommend the podcast to your family, friends, and everybody who's interested in the topics that we address. Again, thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you tune in again in 2 weeks for a new episode. For the time being, all the best and goodbye.